Good afternoon, hello, welcome to the TriathlonDan YouTube channel. If you are new around here, please do hit that subscribe button down below, it means a great deal to me. This video is all about when me and two of my friends last week went out and tried to set a KOM on a local 10-mile time trial circuit. Spoiler alert, we failed, but this ride had two purposes. Firstly, to have a good strong ride, and secondly, to prepare us for the National Team Time Trial Championships. I've got the onboard footage and data from the whole ride, so I'm going to press play on it now because it's quite a long video as it is, and I want to be able to start talking about the ride. So, in this video I'm going to talk about what the purpose of the ride was, what we learned, what went well, what didn't go well, and then of course leading on to the National Team Time Trial Championships, which when this video goes out, it is tomorrow, so it's on the Sunday the 22nd of May. My Strava is in the description down below, so if you're watching it after 22nd of May, the ride will have happened and will be in my Strava, so please do feel free to check it out. So, this course is it's often referred to the Mapley 10 or the Sherwood 10 if you know it. It's just a 10-mile time trial course. It's a little bit undulating, a little bit twisty, a couple of roundabouts and stuff. It's just a sort of British time trial course, but the reason we chose this course is because logistically it's midpoint near where we all live, easy to get to in the evening, and also there are a couple of clubs that do time trials on it, and this is one of those nights. So a club was using the circuit, which means that there's a couple of marshals out, means there's some riders on the course, means there's a couple of signs out, drivers are more aware. You know, riding at 25-30 miles an hour is quite dangerous on open roads. You don't know what cars are going to do, so just made us feel a little bit more safe doing it in that sort of format. So who are we? A bit about us. So my name's Daniel, I'm an amateur triathlete. I do like my cycling, I probably do more cycling than swimming and running. The person in front of me right now, his name is Matt. He also was a triathlete, but he has turned his hand just to cycling now. Matt, I would say, is a really strong road rider, and he's only just in the last year or so turned his hand to time trialing. Super switched on guy, loves the data, loves the technology. He's really sort of finding his feet in the time trial world. He's recently ridden a 52 minutes and 30 second 25-mile TT, which is about 28.5 miles an hour, which is pretty decent. He's on a new bike this year as well, so we're looking forward to seeing that develop. And the other rider who will pull through at some point is a gentleman called Lee. Lee, again, I've known for a few years now, done a few events with both of these guys, so I've actually done the Red Bull time lapse, the Etape de Tour, we supported Lee at the National 24-hour Time Trial Championships, a few different things. So Lee, years ago, was a very, very strong rider. He still is a strong rider, but he will admit himself he's not as fit as he used to be. He rode on the same professional bike team as Joe Skipper. He's ridden the UCI Tour of Serbia. A class athlete. He's done a 12-hour TT. I think he's done 286 miles. He did the 24-hour last year off of not a great deal of training. They did 460 something miles. Class rider, he's just strong. So that's a little bit about ourselves. We are not elite in any way. Matt is a Cat 2 roadie, I'm a Cat 4 roadie, Lee is obviously a Cat 3 now, so he's scaled down, but was an elite cat. We're probably, if you want to put some numbers on it, I'd probably say Matt and I are maybe a little bit stronger than Lee, only because he's been doing such little training. I think our road thresholds are between 360 and 370 watts. Lee's probably a little bit lower than that. But in this sort of event, in time trialing, that all changes, and Lee has demonstrated time and time again, he might not have those peak numbers, but he is just a class rider, and he can hold very close to his threshold for a long time. So I would say for this purpose, for this ride, we're all pretty evenly matched, I think. Sure, I'm a little bit heavier than Matt, but maybe I can put out a little bit more power. I don't know, but we're not different enough to his Lee coming through now. We're not different enough for it to be a major factor in our tactics. So for the purpose of this, we were just sort of rolling through and each, you know, pacing ourselves on the front. So 10-mile time trial, we were doing it at probably 90 to 95% of effort, or, you know, in places we wanted to replicate the decisions you make on the fly when you're under pressure, when your heart rate's sky high, when your lactate's burning, when you're in the zone, so that if we find any problems, we can rectify them ahead of the Team Time Trial Championships. We didn't want to just have a social ride around and practice pulling turns off and it being okay, and then on race day riding differently. So that's what we're doing. You can see here I'm at the back of the group. We're going up a slight incline, so I'm still doing 300 odd watts, but the idea was that you pull through to the front, you do threshold or a little bit over threshold, and then you drop back, and we see how it goes. There are a few things that we didn't really know. We didn't really know how hard you have to go in the line. We didn't know how hard it is to get back onto the back. We didn't know how hard you have to go on the front to move pretty well. We've done time trialing, but not team time trialing. It's a different sport. So you will see here we're using the strategy of the second rider is overtaking the first and is pulling the third rider through, and we're doing between 1 minute and 2 minutes on the front. We did 1 minute turns tonight just so that we could get plenty of turns. I think we're actually going to go to longer turns for the National Team Time Trial Champs because it's a longer race and because turns is inefficient. But yeah, that's why we're just cycling through a lot of turns. I made some notes so I don't forget what to talk about, by the way, so let's work through these. I've spoken a little about ourselves. I don't think there's anything else to add to that. So previous team experiences, none of us have any team time trial experience. So this isn't a video where I'm saying this is how to ride a team time trial, struggling aren't I, in the best way. This is the best way we think we can do. But if you've got any thoughts, please do let me know down below, because we could certainly do with some help, although we probably aren't rewriting the strategy 2 days before the race. So I've just gone around the left-hand junction there. That was pretty smooth. We didn't really have to back off much at all. And then coming through Matt, we were talking about when we make changes, it's a good time to do it on the top of a climb, because the person on the front's probably pushed a little bit harder. They might lose a bit of momentum over the top, whereas second rider comes through, just pulls the third person through them. That's a pretty good thing to do, we think. Let me talk a little bit more about the strategy and the factors we've got at play. So 3 riders, the rules for the Team Time Trial Champs, I might just call it TTT now, are that you start as 3 and your time is taken on the third rider. So you're only as fast as the third rider. If we go too hard, blow one person up, they get dropped, we split up, that's no good, because the time's going to be stopped from the third rider getting there. So you can pretty much ride, you're pretty much riding at the third rider's pace, so the weakest or the slowest rider. Now that doesn't really make sense, because you're not just going to put the weakest person at the back and let them not take a turn and not be involved. But what you're trying to think about is not blowing anybody up in the group, because we're all strong at different times. For example, Lee coming through now, I'm fairly sure that Lee is like power to drag better than me on the flats. However, I probably climb a little bit better than him. So if we were to go up a hill really hard, he might drop off the back, but if he's to go really hard on the flat, I might drop off. So we have to think about all these different factors. Matt is probably the fastest on the flat and up hills, which is good to have, but you also have to think about, okay, Matt, don't go flat out up a hill, because you're going to put us in real difficulty. Matt will perhaps make sure that he's on the front on every hill, because then he's more within himself. We might be climbing closer to our max, but he's not putting us in the danger zone, sort of thing. So there's a lot of factors to consider, but we're not, you know, a really well supported team. This is it, us 3, this is all we have. Matt has a lot of spreadsheets and stuff, but we don't have a director sportive telling us who to do what. So we're relying on communications. We were really keen to talk to each other, to shout up, you know, how are you feeling? Are you struggling? Hold, push on, all those sorts of things, because we can't let it get too far into the ride. If it's too hard, you need to shout up early on so that we can then be faster as a group. We're trying to think about smoothness, we're trying to think about carrying pace, all the things that we sort of learn through normal time trialing. We can see here that my heart rate's dropped down quite low now when I've sat in the group for a couple of minutes, but then we're coming up a hill and I'm having to do 400 watts on Matt's wheel, 420, 430, 440, 450, up to 500 watts, 520, 530, just to hold his wheel. So my heart rate is going to spike, and that's a big effort there. So it's those sorts of things that we're looking at on this night and thinking, right, on this team, so now if I'm expected to roll through, well, I've already done a big effort for 30 seconds or so am I going to deliver a good turn? Those sorts of things. I think I've covered the rules for team time trial. There aren't really many rules other than you can draft as much as you like and use whatever strategy you like. Now, we did think about a couple of different strategies. I actually pitched that we should peel off, rather than now where I'm pulling through. I said 2 people on the front both going hard is a bit of a wasted effort, isn't it? Like, you shouldn't have that. I think we should have 1 person peeling off. However, after having tested it, I think this is the better way to do it. But what we're really clear is that when that second rider, so as soon as I pulled out, I shout really loudly, coming through, so that Matt knows to ease up a bit, so we haven't got 2 people on the front both going hard. Because the reality is, if Matt's doing 360, 370 watts on the front, I'm going to struggle to get around him. I need him to ease off so I can actually come past him. So there's little things like that we're also thinking about. That's our strategy. Second rider coming through, pulling the third rider through with them, doing between 1 minute and 2 minutes on the front. Right, getting on the back. So something that's different about team time trialing than it is to time trialing is get on the back. So see here, Lee's coming through, he's pulling Matt with him, I've eased off, and then I've got to try and get on the back. So here I'm doing 400 watts just to get on Matt's wheel. When you pull off, or when the second rider comes through, you're moving a little bit slower than that rider coming through, aren't you? Which is okay until you get to the back, and you need to increase your speed to be able to get on that back wheel. So when you're taking a turn, you can't take a turn empty yourself and think, oh, I'm just going to drop on the back now and recover. You need to save a little bit so that you can actually get on the back and recover. And that's something that really, really rang home with me having done this, because later in the video, I nearly get dropped. So we're coming here to a turn. Now on the course, there are a few roundabouts at the Nationals. There was only 2 roundabouts on this one, or 2 that we had to actually go around. This one is like a 180-degree turn, so go all the way around it. And now we're thinking here, Lee on the front is probably the best technically out of all of us. Matt is probably 3rd, I'm probably 2nd. So we see here, Lee goes around the corner pretty quickly, and I think Matt shouts something like, ease up, or, you know, don't go as fast, something like that, which is the right thing to do. And I'm perhaps a bit all over the back of Matt, perhaps I could have gone a bit quicker. So we're just thinking about those sorts of things. So now Matt just made sure that Lee didn't kick off the roundabout and basically leave us. But we pulled off there pretty smooth, that was okay. The position I'm in, okay, maybe I could have cornered a little bit faster. It wouldn't have been a huge amount, but that's not the end of the world, because if I'd have cornered faster, Matt would have just been off the back and would have just had to wait anyway, or Matt would have had to put a dig in. So we're going to think a bit more about that, and we've eventually decided that we're all going to corner at our own speeds, but what we might do is perhaps put Matt on the front going into a roundabout, and we can come on the inside or outside of him depending how big the roundabout is and so on. But it's pretty much just pot luck, to be honest. We can't really plan the exact distance of turns so that you get to a roundabout in the exact order that you want to be in, but we just play it by ear basically. Smoothness and slowest ride, I've talked about that. Pulling through, staying out longer. This is something that we only really learnt after the ride. I sort of picked up on it and tried to explain it on the ride, but it's hard to do so when you're trying to do like 25 miles an hour and your heart rate's pretty high. When I'm pulling through here, I was trying to make a conscious effort to stay out into the road for longer, just so that this second rider could stay on my wheel longer. However, Matt and Lee weren't always doing that. We hadn't talked about it beforehand, it's only because I was suffering when they were doing it. And basically, I think what I'll do is I'll perhaps talk about this when they come past me in a minute. So let me talk about something else and we'll come back to that. Headwind, tailwind. This is similar to individual time trial pacing strategy. Into the headwind, we were finding it was so much easier in the line than it is with a tailwind. And we sort of knew that anyway, but not to the extremes that it was. I'm talking, there are points here where I'm doing 200 watts on the back of the group and Matt's doing 350 plus on the front, or Lee is, and then vice versa with a tailwind, I'm doing 350 on the front and Matt's doing 300. So it's like, you've got to bear that in mind with your own pacing as well as protecting your team. So here we go, so Lee's coming through, he comes in front of me there, and then Matt is just, okay, Matt comes through okay on that one, but there are other occasions where that first rider pulls in front of me, or whoever is just pulling off, and that second rider gets left out in the wind for 10-20 seconds until they make enough gap to come through. Not the end of the world once or twice, but times it by 20 or 30 turns in a time trial, 20 or 30 times 10 seconds adds up, doesn't it, for all that time in the wind where you're not actually pulling anybody else. Inefficient. So we see here, I'm almost freewheeling down this hill. Lee is still on the front working, so he's probably doing a fairly decent amount of power. He's got a big chainring on, so I'm sure he's still pressing on. We're doing 40 miles an hour, so it's not really worthwhile pressing on too much. Okay, he just sort of soft taps there a little bit. But yeah, this is a real good recovery section here, so it sort of gives us all a little bit of a breather. I'm quite tired on this evening, I think. My heart rate plummets when I recover when I'm tired. So here we go, I'll come through again. Yeah, so I think it's here. So see Matt there, drops straight in front of Lee, and I'm sat out in the wind because Lee's not quite dropped back far enough. Maybe he has, maybe I'm riding a bit overcautious, but when you're on the extensions, it's really hard to see where the back wheel is of the rider in front. The last thing we want to do is clip the rider's wheel in front at 32 miles an hour. That would be far from ideal. So yeah, a little bit of a learning for us there. Don't mind me, just have a drink. Cheers. So we're coming up to another junction in a minute, and this is where things don't go quite so to plan, which is okay. We wanted this to happen. We wanted there to be things that we needed to work on from this ride. We didn't want to go to this ride and have a perfect ride and then think, oh great, we've cracked it, and then things go wrong on the Nationals day. We wanted to find things to do. So yeah, see, I'm sat on Matt's wheel. I'm going up a slight hill, so I'm still doing big power, 360, 370, 380. Matt's probably doing that, if not a little bit more. And then I take the opportunity, so I'm coming over the top of a hill, Matt's worked hard and then he's worked up the hill, as good as he is, he would probably ease off a little bit over the top of the hill. I'm, you know, fresh legged, I just have a bit of recovery, so it makes sense for me to pull through over the top. While the speed's low, it's easier for Matt to get on the back of the group, and I can just keep that momentum going, keep that speed up. Time trialing, as much as it's all about power and heart rate and everything else, the only thing that actually matters is speed, is keeping your speed up. So it's all about how can we go as fast as possible with the, you know, with the horsepower we've got, with the power and aerodynamics that we've got available. And little things like that really add up. When I come past Matt, I was probably doing a mile an hour, 2 miles an hour faster than him, and that is then the pace that the group is going. So yeah, it just makes sense to do that. So we're coming up to the right hand turn now. So I don't think I stay on the front for this. We'll see in a second, but I go up a hill. I'm working reasonably hard. My heart rate is okay. That's about a threshold heart rate for me, so I'm feeling all right. This bit we actually turned into a tailwind as well when we turn right here, so I sort of think this is the last really hard work bit on the front. It's then going to get a little bit easier with the tailwind. So Lee comes past me, Matt comes past me. It's a good time to change on a corner on a junction. So I was thinking I'm not going to have to jump on. I had to put a little dig in there to get on the wheel before the junction. It was a bit further away than I thought. It was a bit of a funny shaped roundabout, so that's not ideal. But I think, okay, great, I'm on the back now. We're doing 25 miles an hour, then we're doing a junction. The roads are still open, so Lee's signalling, taking it a bit steady. I come alongside Matt thinking Matt's not going to corner as fast. I'll just get a bike length on him and just drop back in. Then we come out the corner, and Lee's got 3-4 bike lengths, and he just kicks out the corner, not super hard, but he's got that anaerobic snap, and you can see there he's got 10-15 meters. And Matt shouts, hold. I don't know if he hears us or not. I'm doing nearly 600 watts on Matt's wheel, trying to close this gap. Still nearly 600 watts, still 500 watts. Still 500 watts, just trying to close it. Then Matt's then got that momentum, so might as well carry it through, which is right. And I didn't want to back off and break the chain up, so I just followed him through. But Lee's probably then struggled to get back onto us because we've come past him a fair bit faster. And that whole bit on that corner there was not ideal. Matt and I probably still, so my heart rate's pretty high, probably still catching up a little bit from the fatigue from that effort. Lee has probably not been affected too much other than us coming past him. In hindsight, I think we should have worked a little bit harder, but perhaps then got on Lee's wheel, just managed that effort a little bit more rather than it being a snap, and really shouted Lee to ease up, I think. But in the grand scheme of getting dropped, that's not a major error. We resolved it within 30 seconds or so, but that's not something I want to do if I was absolutely on the limit or I'd just done a big turn. That could be the difference between putting yourself in the red and having to miss a turn, and not putting yourself in the red and having to miss a turn. We want to get the best that we can out of all of us to get the best result we can. So, talking about results, so National Team Time Trial Championships, there are 17 male teams entered. Some of them are very elite, some are elite. A lot of them, in fact, do you know what, I think all of them are probably strong teams, because it's quite difficult logistically to get 3 riders together to do this. It's quite difficult to get, you know, 3 people to the start line and so on. So I think it deters like the average club team. There are a few club teams in a handful, but not a huge amount. We're probably towards the lower end. There are teams like Ribble World Tie, St Piran, Aerolab World Wheels, you know, actual proper cycling teams. We can't in any way compete with those guys. We are not as strong as them, we're not as aerodynamic as them, we're not as well organised as them. It's just one of those things, but we are going to do the absolute best that we can. Now, there's a website called Spin Data. Matt and I absolutely love that. I don't know if Lee's used it much or not, potholes. And it basically gives you a ranking. So when you do a time trial, it gives you a score. Oh, big effort to get back on the wheel, Daniel, come on. It gives you a score based on your result, and that is also used ahead of time trials when the start sheets go up on CTT. Spin Data also predicts what time it thinks you're going to do, what position it thinks you're going to come, and sometimes it's accurate, sometimes it's not. We've actually found it's pretty accurate, to be honest, and what the performances we're going to do. However, it doesn't work for the team time trialing. It obviously can't compute drafting and so on. So what Matt has done is taken everybody's individual Spin Data ranking, not just for our team, for all teams. Some teams, not everybody had a ranking, so he sort of looked at their results or took an average of the other 2 team members, assuming that, you know, if there's 2 team members in a certain level, the third rider is probably going to be an average of their 2 performances. They're not going to have somebody who's really strong or somebody who's nowhere near. Basically it projects us to be very close to the first women's team. So we're like, come on, let's make that like the target. The first 8 teams are, well, Matt says we need a miracle to beat them. So 9th is probably our best result looking at our ability level. Obviously we'd love better, and anything can happen on the day, and some teams might not turn up and so on. But that just shows you the standard, you know. I like to think that me, Matt and Leah, 3 reasonably strong club cyclists. Like, we're by no means elite, but you know, we're okay in the mix. It's not very often we'll ride with a group of people, and we won't be able to ride with them, particularly on the flats and stuff. So just makes you realise how strong these people are. So we're definitely going to go for a top 10 result. That'd be awesome. So we're coming to the finish down here now. The map on the left hand side, it goes on a bit longer than the actual finish. So see there, Lee come past me from the back. Lee sensed that the pace was dropping a little bit, so came from the back, and he knew how close we were to the finish. We talked about this afterwards. That's something I should have picked up on. I should have sensed the speed dropping, and I should have pulled through. Lee coming from the back and doing an effort isn't efficient. He's got to go past 2 bike lengths before he's even at the front. And then now I'm thinking, well, I said to him when he came past, I've got the legs, so I thought I feel pretty fresh. I'll give him 20 or 30 seconds, and then I'll come back past him. You know, he's come by, obviously wanted to do a turn, so it's silly for me to just go straight back past him again. So I'm going to give him a little bit of time to demonstrate how strong he is, which is very. And then I came past again, and I said to him, you know, I've got the legs. So we're doing 37 miles an hour here, but we're coming up to the finish. I think we go over this roundabout, and then the finish is about 400 meters after that. But this roundabout, it also falls to pot. But this is what's going to happen. When you start getting towards the finish, adrenaline's flowing a bit more, you're all trying to get the most out of yourself, your strategy's perhaps going a little bit out the window, Lee coming from the back, that wasn't in the plan. Coming to the roundabout, so I'm on the front. I know I'm doing like 34 miles an hour. I don't actually have speed on my Wahoo, but I knew we were going fast. So I'm easy, I know how tight this roundabout is. It's on the Outlaw half course, if anybody knows it. You go left up there up to Oxton Bank, but you come from this way. Anyway, so I come at the roundabout, and then one of them shouts, "Hold," as if I've put a gap into them. So I ease off here, I go down to about, what, 300 watts? I don't ease off much, but I still ease off enough for there to be a drop in speed. And then Matt and Lee come past me, having put an effort in to catch me up, and I really struggle. Look at this now, 600 watts. I really struggle to get back onto them. And this is something we talked about afterwards. We're only going to shout hold if we really need to, and if that happens, the two coming through need to think about, are we going to do damage to this guy by coming past him? Because in reality, if we're this close to the end of the team time trial tomorrow, I've not had the legs to close that gap. The team time trial is 29 miles, this is 10. So whilst I could do it here and we hadn't ridden flat out, I might not be able to do it after an hour or so of riding. So but it's all learnings. As I say, you know, if you've got any tips for anything, please do let us know down below. I think we did okay. We didn't get the KOM. We rode about 22 minutes, I think, for the 10 miles. It was a massively like cross-windy day, but we were happy with it. We got done what we needed to get done. Really enjoyed it, and yeah, it was a good learning experience. I think we've come to the finish now, and we tried to, you know, do the fan out thing. So Lee's coming alongside Matt. He's not necessarily coming through to take a turn, but if you lose that bike length, that means that your time stops when you cross the line. I was sort of thinking the same thing, but I wasn't quite sure where the finish was, so I just came alongside Lee. We don't ride 3 abreast normally, it's only because I think that's the finish line there. We're sort of practicing that, you know, that sort of strategy. And then I thought that the course was still going, so I still did another like minute or so at 400 watts for no apparent reason. But there you go. Anyway, so that is it. That is our team time trial preparation ride on a local 10-mile TT course, where we went pretty full out. I mean, Matt said he could have done it again, but I think for me and Lee, that was reasonably hard effort, especially on tired legs. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that. Hope you got something from it. If you are in the area, I can't remember exactly where the time trial is. West Bridgeford, East Bridgeford, near there somewhere on the A46. Feel free to go out and watch. It's not really a spectator-friendly course on the A46, but if you're in the area, it might be worth a look. Good luck to you if you are racing, other than if you're Ribble and St. Piran, etc. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow at 1 PM for a normal video, and then I'll do the time trial after a couple of days when I've had a chance to digest it a little bit more, I think. See you later.